Epic Sage is where your journey begins. Our shells are stacked high where the magic never ends. From dice that roll true to tones ancient and wise, we got all the essentials for your game to arise. With adventure in mind, we craft every piece to make your campaign flourish, more stories increase. For every TTRPG dream, our stories refine. Come find your next quest, leave the money behind. Epic Sages is where you find satisfaction. We bring the spark, you bring the passion. We control the board, you control the action. Epic Sages, where legends find traction. Epic Sages, where legends find traction.
Hello. Welcome to tonight's episode 21 of Season 5. We're calling this one the Not Quite You, when you're playing a character that isn't like you at all. So we're gonna start off as per the usual and introduce our star guests. We have a third one on the way, but they were attacked by small children before they could get on screen here, so they will join us when they have a chance. But currently, our two wonderful star guests are right here in front of us, and we're just gonna go in order here. So start off, we're gonna start with Miss Kerry here. Kerry, can you please tell us who you are, what you do, all your fun stuff, and where people can find you?
All my fun stuff. I am Kerry Blaser. I am a mother, a shaman, and an author. And word on the street is that my soul is the same soul as Mary Magdalene. So I'm, going through all that. Anyway, my website is kerryblaser.com. I also have Kerry Blaser official on Instagram. You can find me there.
Fantastic, easy peasy, straight up. All right, and then we're jumping over to Gerald.
Hi, I'm Gerald Collins, also known as Run Rev Collins. I'm the founder and owner of Run Rev Coaching. I am a ordained minister. I am also a father, a husband, and just basically a Renaissance man in a lot of different ways. You can find me on my website at runrevcoaching.com or on Instagram at runrevcoach_Gerald.
Fantastic. And yeah, I was able to tag both of you, so if you guys need to find them, they are also tagged in our intro post we did this week. So, jumping right into tonight's topic. We're gonna speed run that because we had a power outage earlier, and I'm taking zero chances of us getting to the meat and potatoes of this podcast. Dang it. So, first and foremost, as per usual, I'm gonna ask you guys, when we say the title, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? So, starting ladies first here. Kerry, when we say "not quite you," what is the first image that just kind of pops in your head, or the phrase that follows, or something along those lines?
Not a prostitute.
Okay, interesting. Is
This is a very
is that a painting that we should know about, or is that just the phrase you're going with?
That was like a historical thing the Pope did to Mary Magdalene in the 6th century. He gave a speech and in one fell swoop turned her into a prostitute. I mean, There's a lot of evidence now that Mary Magdalene was Jesus Christ's wife. She was at the crucifixion. She was at the resurrection. And I have a master's degree in East Asian religious studies. Like, I speak Chinese. I went east, I didn't go west. But when in accepting myself, I had to do some research. So I kind of, did all that and figured that out. Like, oh, that's interesting. That there's just, and then there's all this historical textual evidence of her being his wife, and so it's a whole thing.
Interesting. Okay. Um, I don't really have a follow up for that one, but we'll get back to it. Um,
Excuse me.
Gerald.
For me, the first thing that comes to mind is, especially nowadays, there's so many people polarized. It's like you're this or you're that, you're A or you're B, you're left or you're right, you're this or. And honestly, to me, when I hear not quite you, it's seeing someone through their eyes, learning to understand, even if you totally disagree with them, even if you're not even on the same footing, trying to understand who they are, why they are, and come to a better understanding of who the other person is. And you may walk away with a totally different viewpoint, but you may understand where they're coming from and what their viewpoint is.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. Very cool. I like both of those answers. Personally, on my end of things, when I think not quite you, it's very much the chameleon effect, right? Where you are the people that they think you are, not necessarily the person that you are, right? Your voice sounds different than your head than it does in a recording every time you listen to it. Even after you've listened to it to 100 times, that's still not quite you, right? Um, I gotta love that bit of life where you're like, I sound great all the time, and then you listen to yourself, you go, son of a gun. That's not what it sounded like in my head. I didn't. Yeah, rah, 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 rah. But kind of in the D&D context, one of the cool things that D&D players get to do is they get to step outside themselves on a minor scale or a major scale, right? Something as simple as being an orc or a Aarakocra, which is a bird person, or any of the other furry, animal-y types of classes and races that you can be in D&D, right? You're a person, you're not one of those things. That's an easy transition to, hey, I'm a turtle person. That's not quite you, right? Everything else could be the same, but you're a turtle person. But we also get to jump into other things like changing your gender entirely. I know plenty of people that play male characters only being female, or vice versa, where males will play female characters only because they just enjoy the other aspect of playing those things, right? And going through the struggles of the others, right? Or the benefits, because sometimes things are easier depending on who and what games you're playing. We'll kind of get into that a little bit later, but kind of jumping into your guys' stuff, Carrie, when we talk about you and your enlightenment and transitions and things you've gone through on your side of things, what do you think is a good example of one of those times where you have had that not quite yourself moment where you've realized that you could be someone different than who you were?
Different than who I was. It's a major moment for that is after my suicide attempt. So I'm 55. 10 years ago, on my 45th birthday, June 25th, my mom passed away. And I had been caring for her for 3 weeks, and I was her medical proxy. So I, followed all of her wishes. No tubes. She wants to see everyone. Okay, so she did. And then that was the day that my intuition said, it's time to accept my psychic gifts and it's time to heal from my childhood trauma. I started learning how to surf the waves of life, like go into my pain a little and come out of my pain and go in. And you don't learn to surf on a 70-foot wave. You learn on the 1-foot wave, right? So that was me. So 4 years later, I was ready for the big wave, the suicide attempt. And I took all the medication I had and I went upstairs and just laid down in my bed and just let go. I mean, on medication, I mean like trazodone, Klonopin, Soma, Ambien, like they were full too, like 120 Klonopin, like not a couple, like a lot. So then luckily I survived. And then in the psych ward, I was rooming with a young woman who was 18 years old and had a serious eating disorder. And my youngest has an eating disorder. And the reason I attempted suicide that day is because during our first therapy session, she blamed me for her eating disorder. And when I went home, my brain told me that I would be better off, my kids would be better off with a dead mother than a live one. And so I, you know, tried to, accommodate. Luckily, I was unsuccessful. But here we come to like the moment where I was like, is that me? How is that me? How is this me? Um, so it was like one like the last night I was there and I was sleeping in the same room as this 18-year-old girl, and her mom had passed away when she was 11. And her mom's soul came through and gave me a message to tell her, including her childhood nickname, and ran right over and gave her the message with the childhood nickname we'd never discussed. And we're both like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, right? And then in the middle of the night, I wasn't sleeping well because one of the main reasons I was on those medications because I'd never slept from the anxiety and depression. In the middle of the night, her mom's soul came to me and asked how to interact with her daughter's soul in a way that wouldn't hurt her. I said, well, as long as your intent is loving, then you can't hurt your daughter. And so they interacted, and the 18-year-old girl woke up the next morning, and she had not had any hunger cues for 3 years because she had had anorexia so badly. She woke up with massive hunger cues and ate her whole breakfast. And I was like, I think I'm a healer, but I just attempted suicide. What do I do now? But that was 7 years ago. And I just put one step in front of the other and I figured out my crap. I just figured it out. And that's what my book is. It's mostly from a suicide attempt till December of last year of 2024, and how I figured out my crap and the wisdom I gained along the way. And I had a lot of craps that I had to take accountability for. It was a lot of crap.
Well, I feel like that fits in way too well with what we're talking about here today. So I'm glad you're still with us for the record. So I appreciate you being here. But I have follow up questions. Are you ready?
Mhm.
So in those moments when you got past your attempt, right, and you got to be there for someone else, did you look back and find that you were a better person because of it?
Well, yeah, yeah, and so that I had positive to give because, when we pour from an empty cup, then we pour from lack. We pour on anxiety and depression, and but when learning to surf the waves of life is another way of saying it is learning to fill up my own cup of love in my heart so I have extra overflowing. And so that's what I learned is when I put other people before myself, which is a traditional trauma response, it's inverted wisdom, um, is to act when I act from a wound, then I'm acting from inverted wisdom and I put community before me. And by the time I get to me, I got nothing left. But when I invert that and I love on myself through diet and exercise and meditation and, turning my wounds into wisdom and figuring out my crap, then that's how I fill up my own cup of love and it's overflowing. So that is the process I had to learn how to do. I had to learn, I'd like reparent myself as the healing process. I had to recalibrate my nervous system to resonate with love, fear, and compassion instead of fear, guilt, and shame, like I had done my whole life, like I'd learned in my childhood. And so it was, yeah, that way.
Fantastic. I love that entire message. So we're gonna before we get to Gerald, I'm gonna go back and introduce our third star guest. Hello, welcome. I'm glad you made it past the small children. Wahaha.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, and your volume looks
Oh,
okay on my end. Actually, I'm gonna turn you up too. You're a little quiet. We're gonna make you loud. Say one more thing really quick.
one more thing, real quick.
All right, that's good enough for me. Wahaha.
Got it.
So, first off, we gotta introduce you, who you are, where you're from, all that fun stuff, and where people can find you.
All right. I'm Nicole Royer. I am from just outside of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and I can be found at the Nerd in a Skirt on pretty much any social media platform.
Fantastic. And what do you do?
I am a chief operations officer for a couple different startups and a strategy consultant
And a big nerd. Don't forget that part. That was that.
and a huge nerd, biggest nerd.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, we're gonna give you the first question really quick, and then we'll get you in the rotation for the second question here. So, first question is: when we say tonight's title, which is Not quite you. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Image, saying, phrase. What does that invoke when you hear it?
Not Quite Me is basically like my anti-hero version. Um, so I'm typically a pretty rational, logical person, but I have this other side of me that is essentially a vigilante, kind of like Daredevil or the Punisher, that creeps in every so often, and I have to kind of override that other persona. So that's the not me part. That's the not quite me, but it is still a part of me.
Interesting. And we'll kind of ping on that a little bit later as we talk about the different parts of people. Jumping back to our second question, and Gerald, on your turn here. When we talk about the not quite you, when you're dealing with your coaching business and talking with your kids slash adults, um, how often you kind of see that change when people start to realize who they are after coming to talk to you, right? Like when they go through your process, do you ever get that moment where you're like, aha, I've explained them to themselves and they can kind of figure it out from there?
It actually is because it's kind of very apropos that we led into the issues with grief and depression and anxiety because that is who I love to work with is runners who are using physical activity to deal with their grief and their depression and anxiety because it's how I started in running and it's also how I found that physical activity was so beneficial to me and it's so amazing how you just see people that, for one, they think they can't do something or they think that they're not capable of doing something. And small changes in their lives, they think everything's got to be this big, huge thing or they've got to run everything all out. And it's not an all out thing. Running is large part just putting one step in front of the other. It's small little changes that make the progression in life. It's kind of funny because eventually you'll see some people who realize that that connection isn't just running, that that little thing of making small changes applies to every aspect of your life. You don't get to the big massive things by making large steps. You get there by making small steps repeatedly over and over again, whether it is learning how to do your job or learning how to how to be a parent or learning how to drive your car or anything. You get where you're going by small incremental progressions, not by making big steps. And it's so amazing when they start to realize that, oh, this applies to more than just my physical activity, that my physical activity is tied in with my spiritual activity, is tied in with my mental activity. We're all tied together. And it's not just everything compartmentalized, every little aspect ties together.
Fantastic. Again, I love that. That's a great way to put all that. So when you work with your kids, I'm going to call them kids because I'm not sure what age range you deal with, but I'm going to assume most of them are probably younger than you, right? Um,
Hey, are you younger than me? You have more of them.
um, when they kind of get to that point, right? How many of them do you think kind of hit that better understanding for you? How many of them are kind of successful at that point, or is there a lot more work that goes into it once they grasp that basic concept that you're talking about? Not
For
that it's really
me, and
basic
when I'm
because it's
working
hard,
with
but
someone,
whatever.
yeah, no, for me, there's a lot more that usually goes into it, but it's like I'm not going to give you everything at once because it's literally overwhelming. So I'm going to take you where you're at and I'm going to give you the next step. And I'm going to show you, every little thing is just the next little step. If I try to give a runner everything that's in my head or everything that I think they may eventually need to know all at once, it's going to short circuit because with what I'm doing with my running work and work with individuals, you've got nutrition components, you've got sleep components, you've got that's why I kind of highlight race readiness. You've got mindset issues. You so there's physical issues, mindset issues. There's like I said, the everything together. But if you throw everything and everyone at once, if I give them everything, it's like, this is too much. I can't do this. No, no, I can't do this. But if I ask you to just, okay, on this weekend's run, I want you, if you normally don't take any nutrition, I want you to take one more piece of nutrition. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, okay, let's try 2 pieces of nutrition. And it's like, we're just adding one extra thing. We're not adding 5 things at once. We're adding one extra thing. And after a while, you have a month or 2 months, you look back and you go, wait a minute, I'm doing so much better and I'm doing all this stuff. Like, when did I start doing all this stuff? It's because you changed one thing a week. And then at the end of 5, 10 weeks, you're going, how did I get here? Because this doesn't make, I didn't think I'd ever get here. You got there by making those small changes.
Yes, kind of to follow up on that one, I do love the mantra behind like make yourself 1% better every day. 1% isn't a lot, but over a year, that's 3 times as much as you were before. Actually, three and a half times as much as before. You got to take some days off though, so we're gonna cut down on a few of those days. But that aside, it's a wonderful concept to go through because it is generally the most successful across the board when you're working with people. Nicole, jumping over to you, the hard question: when you're dealing with your startups and things, do you ever like look at a startup and be like, "That's not what you're saying you are. Is not what you're being. How do we change it to who you want to say who you are?"
All the time.
All the time. Startups are hard.
Oh gosh. Startups are really hard, and founders like to get in one. They like to get in their own head and they like to get in their own way. So they come in and they have what they believe to be this brilliant solution for a problem that either they have or that they happened upon. And a lot of them just kind of run with it. Now I have a business. Now I'm going to start selling it. And there have been so many times where I've come in because they realize that they can't grow, they're not hitting their goals, whatever it is. And I say, because you didn't align early on, you didn't validate your idea, you didn't test your audience, you didn't align properly in order to build a business. You basically gain some traction, probably friends and family who love you, their network, and then you kind of outgrew your market. And now you don't know where you're going. So a lot of times I come in and I'm like, yeah, this is either not the right audience, not the right solution. Like, let's go back and actually talk to people who you want to solve a problem for and really understand what problem you're actually solving. And is this something that is valuable to them or not? And honestly, there have been, I mean, I would say probably a quarter of the businesses that I've worked with, and I've worked with over 550 businesses in the past 12 years. Um, about a quarter of them where I went back and said, you're really, really not, you don't have the right solution for the audience, or you don't have a good understanding of the audience you're trying to work with. So we do a lot of free work.
Okay, cool. And that kind of answers my second question of like, what's your kind of success rate with that when you're doing it? So secondary follow up then is when you get to that point where you're telling them, hey, you suck and you need to change. How do you present that to them tactfully?
I just come out and say, you suck, you
Okay,
should change.
all right,
No,
solid,
no,
good,
I mean,
good.
sometimes I do have to be really blunt and say, the reason why you're not getting where you want to get is you. Um, I mean, just like coach, I do a lot with mindset. It's just kind of inherent in working with people and in any leadership capacity. So there are a lot of times where I come in and say, "Hey, you got to really rework your mind around how you're approaching this. You have to think about this differently. If you want to be successful, solve a problem that you know a lot of people have and that you have the data to support that you really understand the problem and that the solution you're offering is something that they actually want to pay money, like real adult money for. Because if not, again, you have a really expensive hobby and great if that's what you want. Um, so yeah, I mean, I do have to be, there's a lot of tough love in what I do.
Solid. Okay. Um, on the TTRPG side of things, when we kind of talk about this and when we look at our DMs as we're training them and things like that, there is a lot of times where we get to that point where you're like, you're not good because you're not trying the right way, right? And really, that comes down to they've been doing it for 10 plus years. There's lots of DMs that have been out there and been a nerd for a long time. They've been doing it a specific way because that's how they were taught or that's how they saw it online forever ago, right? And they don't evolve with what we're doing with things, right? There's no, fun fact for our business, right? There's a lot of drawback on paid DMs, right? Because DMing has been free for forever. Since the game came out, DM bought and paid for everything and just kind of took it on the nose, right? And we're at the forefront of changing that. But being able to go back and look at like, hey, how do you handle situations, whether they're positive interactions or negative interactions at the table to improve yourself, is a huge part of what we do with our stuff. Right? It's kind of reintroducing how to handle criticisms and things like that, right? Because you have an idealized person of who you want to be when you're telling your stories, and then there's the guy who rambles for 40 minutes about frogs or cats or whatever, right? I'm guilty of it as much as anyone else, so don't get me started on mechs. I'll talk about robots all day. But besides that, kind of jumping in the next bit of this, like I said originally, one of the fun things that you get to do from a TTRPG standards, right, is you get to be someone that you are not, right? You get to, I'm really not going to use the word enjoy, but experience other people's struggles, right, as presented in a safe environment, right? Coach, you talked about kind of the feeding someone something a little bit at a time. When we get to work with corporations or things, it's a great way to talk from middle management to lower management on like understanding that those people down below you are still real people, right? And jumping into the, hey, they have feelings too, and you got to remember that, right? One of our good examples is like, you might not care about Bob in accounting, but if Bob in accounting is Dave the Wizard and you like Dave the Wizard, you're going to start paying attention to Dave in accounting, right? So, the question that I'm going to jump over to Kerry with is, how do you get people to kind of step out of themselves to look at a different perspective?
Yeah, I guess how I do it, I corral them in their pain. I'm just being honest. Like, get someone to change, it's got to be uncomfortable. Like, if it's comfortable, if it's working, why change? So, and this is what happens when people don't draw healthy boundaries and their energy goes everywhere and they don't, and no one draws boundaries with them, then they don't have to take accountability for their own crap. Like, that's what I had to learn. Like, I'm like, oh, wow, when I draw a boundary with someone else, like, they change. And when I draw a boundary with myself, like, wow, I change. Like, boundaries are magical. So I would say that is, my kind of way of doing it, is that showing them a different perspective and ask them questions to kind of get them to kind of look inside themselves and go, is that really, what I'm doing? Like, does it behoove you? I'm just giving an example, to hit your wife. Oh, maybe let me think about that. Like, is it to your advantage to talk negatively to yourself, in these numerous ways? And then okay. But it's the boundary drawing, the kind of corralling in the emotions where the change happens, I would say.
Okay, fantastic. Nicole, I'm going to jump over to you. Same question. How do you
Okay, and
take your people and have them step outside themselves?
yeah, and I'm actually going to go with actually a very similar answer. So, the only way that business works is that you have a problem, a solution, and a buyer. The buyer is not motivated to buy unless they're feeling enough pain to make a decision. Business is behavior change. And you have to understand what level of pain is bad enough to change behavior. That's your in for a sale. You have to market from there. So the way that we get people to change their perspective in business is pain.
Yeah. Show them their
Interesting.
pain. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good way to think about it. When we were on the blocks, we talked about vitamins versus painkillers, or supplements versus painkillers. It's kind of the same model. Where like, are you selling a painkiller or are you selling a vitamin? Right? People are going to take painkillers because they need it. Uh, people are going to take vitamins because they want
Supplements
to.
are easier to sell. Yeah, supplements are easier to sell. Anytime you have a business that sells fun or novelty, way easier to sell.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Gerald, jumping over to you. Same question I asked everybody else. So, how do you get your kids to kind of see outside themselves when they need to see a different perspective?
A lot of it, honestly, going to theirs, it starts with me because they're right. If I'm going to try and get them to change, I have to understand what it is their real problem is. And sometimes, especially with athletes, they think the problem is A, when in reality, their problem is B. And I've got to understand what their real problem is, not what they're telling me their problem is. I've got to dig down and ask questions and really dig in to find out what the real problem is, and then go, hey, sounds to me like your problem is this, not really this. You're not able to reach the goal that you want with your races. You're not able to reach the times you want, not because you're not training enough or not because you're not training fast enough. It's because you're not eating enough. It's like the reality is you can't run well if you don't fuel well or if you're not sleeping well. You know, it's okay. You can try to do all the training you want. You can try to do all the things that you want. But if you're not supplying the basic needs, then you're not going to get there. So for me, it's kind of understanding the problem and then presenting to them this is what you want the solution to be, but here's what your real problem is. You thinking it's you're just not training fast enough, you're not training enough volume. The problem is you're not taking care of the other aspects of your life and your body's flat out worn out. And it's kind of like the whole thing that's been coming to me through this entire thing is, especially in role playing games, is people like to play different characters a lot of times because it allows them to be something they normally are afraid of being. But in reality, so many people in life, whether it be runners or it be whatever, they're doing the same thing every day. So many of us, so many times, we actually role play throughout our real life because we're pretending we're something else because we don't want society to see who we really are. We don't want our friends to really see us because we're scared that the real us will run them away. And that's just something that I think that's the mindset issue that I have to work with some of the athletes. And it's the reality is you can't get to where you want to go until you're able to be honest with where you are.
Solid. Follow up question, just to pick on something you said there. Uh, the what about the times when the athlete knows what's wrong with themselves? Like they've analyzed and they said this is my problem, and then you analyze, you go, yeah, that's your problem. How do you work with those guys?
Basically, we're going to usually those kind of people also their goals are going to be outcome goals. A lot of times they tend to want to have a goal of they want to see the goal is what they want to be, but the reality is they need goals of how they're going to get there. So
Mm,
they know what the problem is, and they a lot of times they know what how, they know where they want to get. Just for running, for example, they know that their problem is they're not getting enough fuel, and they know that the outcome they want to fuel more, but they don't have a plan of process of how am I going to fuel more? How am I going to figure out what fuels fuel me? How am I going to figure out how much I should take? They see it as this is the problem. The goal is to solve the problem, but the reality, no, if you want to, you don't worry about solving the problem. I forget which author it was I was reading recently, and I agree with him. You don't solve the problem by focusing on the solution. You solve the problem by focusing on the steps to the solution, and you'll find the solution in the end. It's like if you want to drive from your house to the store, you don't focus on where the store is. You focus on, okay, I need to go out of the driveway. I need to turn right. Then I need to drive down this street. And your focus is on each step of the way. And that's how I work with them as I get them to see that the solution comes when you focus on the steps to that.
interesting. Okay, I really like that, and I'll ping on that a little bit later. But pushing forward for the other bits here, in TTRPG stuff, right? We sometimes goof up, right? Sometimes we try to be someone that we are terrible at being, right? Again, I go back to one of the clearest examples that I've seen messed up probably the most is a male or female person doing their opposite gender, right? They try to be a boy or they try to be a girl, and they are just bad. There's no realism there. They have their idealized version of male or female, and it is just not fun to play with, right? Um, we get that with the people we work with pretty often, right? Where they are trying to be an idealized self of something they don't understand. How do you guys deal with that side of things? How do you get someone to reshape an image to make it realistic? Um, Gerald, I'm going to let you speak first because this was kind of in line with what you were talking about before. So I feel like this will finish your thought here.
That's can actually be one of the most difficult clients to work with, to be honest, because they've established exactly who they are. They've established exactly what they think they are. And usually they're very heels dug in. They don't want to change. They don't want to. The problem is always everything around them, everyone around them. The problem is never them. The problem is never anything they're wanting to do. And to be honest, they're the most difficult sometimes person to work with as a coach and as a client because they don't want to change. And so if you confront them head on, they're just going to go, well, okay, the problem is you don't understand me and I'm leaving you. You kind of got to nuance that. And you've sometimes got to be a sweet talker and a very spoon feed things and kind of lead them to where you want them to go. And have you ever thought about this, or what do you think about this situation? What do you think about that? And I think to me it's guiding them to where you want them to go, not telling them where you want them to go. And that's kind of to me is the solution is taking it step by step and guiding and sometimes realizing that they may have to hit a few walls before they realize that maybe you knew something after all.
You know what? I need you to tell that to some of our problem players at our tables because that is a problem we have all the time. And I appreciate that. Jumping over to Nicole. Nicole, kind of same question to you. Um, with you dealing with strong personalities, probably pretty regularly because I don't think I've met a startup person that isn't strong headed in some form or fashion. Whether it's protecting their baby that they call a business or just their personality in general. Um, how do you kind of get them to get real expectations with what they're doing as they push forward?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have those conversations way too often. I had two of them today with two of my clients. Um, it's a big common thing because there's something called founder syndrome. And what that means, and especially in like nonprofit world, is that you have somebody who has this idea and they treat it like their baby, or they treat it like it's their egg and nobody else can sit on this egg, nobody else understands this egg. And a lot of times the founder in any organization eventually becomes the bottleneck. They hold the power of information. They are the person where all the information runs through, all the decisions run through, and they end up being the ceiling for growth. So I deal with a lot of businesses, and that's kind of like the problem that I solve specifically is the messy middle and plateau of business where they had an idea that was somewhat successful. They've been able to grow to some level, but now they can't grow anymore. They can't scale. They hit this plateau. And so a lot of that comes down to behavior change and helping them understand like the two main components of what causes these issues with the business owner, which are a lack of repeatable defined processes and a lack of predictable data points that show what is actually making the business successful. They have their own idea of what makes it successful, and that's what they've driven all their decision making, all their hiring, all of their processes so far, and it only gets them so far. Again, they hit this plateau, and this is almost every single business I've ever worked with has this problem. So it comes down to really just laying out here are the things that you're missing in order to grow. And if we don't unlever you as the power of information holder, you're not going to grow. And I'm not the right person to work with you. And I'm really blunt about that. If you want to grow, here's my approach, and I do a workshop with them for laying out, their roadmap, and then we have a 90-day workflow of what we have to get done in order to start to see changes. So they have to buy into that, and my job is to, you know, guide them through that and show them why they want to work with me and why they want to follow this and what those results could be compared to where they are now.
Fantastic. Okay, good, 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 good. Kind of in the same path here, so I'm liking this. Going over to Kerry. Kerry, what about you on your end of things? When you're dealing with your peeps and talking about your own experiences, how do you get the people that you're working with to get that realistic expectation of their understanding? Because not everyone is a guru or enlightened or any of those terms that we could use there.
How do I get them to see themselves and go, oh, maybe I need to change?
Sure.
I got a trick for that. It works every friggin' time, okay? Because when something is true, it's true in multiple places. So I'll tell them that wisdom says the universe is a mirror, showing you yourself in every moment as a constant feedback loop for self-improvement. Knowledge says we attract what we are through energetic resonance, meaning a vibrational match. And then I explain the laws of physics experiment about how that works. So I say, so when you see selfishness, when you perceive selfishness outside of yourself, that is your soul showing you the selfishness inside of yourself. There's like a two-pronged physics experiment, and let's say that your energy body, which physicists have proven we all have energy bodies or souls. Like it's so great now we have the science to go along with the spirituality. So so let's say that selfishness resonates at 100 hertz, right? So if I have selfishness in me and then another soul by me also has selfishness, when their selfishness moves, the two-prong experiment shows if 100 hertz resonates, and this is also 100 hertz, then they both move, and then that pulls the attention. So I just explain that to them. So I say, every time you talk negatively about other people, you're just talking about yourself. And when you talk positively about other people, you are talking about yourself. So why are you talking so negatively about yourself? He says it's like, so I just explain, corral them, and then they're corralled in their own crap and they're forced to change. It works every I've net I it's always worked. It always works.
Interesting.
The boundary drawing and the corralling.
Okay. I like the sound, the harmonic speaks. It always makes me smile when they get talked about. So solid across the board here. One final major question before we get to wrap up because we're already at the 40-minute mark. It's been a great conversation so far. We've been doing good. Kind of in the D&D space, right? Or I'm going to step back in the TTRPG space, right? The bigger scope. One of our problems that can also be had is people solidifying how they do something for too long, right? You will see players that are like, I only play D&D 3.5. I would never play Starfinder. I would never play Call of Cthulhu. I only play this one thing, right? You see this in video gamers too, right? They only play Madden or Star Wars or whatever. They have one specific thing that's what they do all the time. And in the TTRPG space, this can kind of lead to putting out, right? Your friend groups kind of die out because they don't want to play Curse of Strahd for the 14th time. Like, yes, you're great at doing the voices on that campaign, and we've seen every possible combination of how to deal with this vampire Yahoo, but they would like to do something else, right? How do you guys get people to evolve from that step to kind of make the next jump into their next frontier, as we will steal from Star Trek here? How do you get them to take the next step forward? And I'll kind of tie into my last thoughts here, but starting with Kerry, we ended with you. We'll start with you this time. Wahaha.
So I use my process called appreciate, learn, forgive equals ego death. And so in that moment I get them to be grateful and open their heart. Opening their heart and surrendering, it calms their nervous system, their cortisol relaxes, minimizes. and their heart's open, they can dive into their emotional pain, their challenge. And I teach them how to turn that challenge into wisdom and then forgive everyone involved. And that way they just like move through a really challenging situation and kind of move from one version of themselves into a different version of themselves and let go of that old version. Because when we do something repeatedly like that, that's a trauma response, that's a wound. And so then I, help them get out of the wound.
Okay, easy. I like that. Straightforward. Gerald, what about you? What about how do you get people to make that next step? Make that time a little bit faster.
It's actually something that has been said to me over and over again, and I'll use it till the day I die. And it's what got you here won't get you there. And it's the reality that what you've been doing has got you to where you are, but you're not going to get to the next step unless you change something. And if you just keep doing the same thing over and over again, you're going to be getting the same results. If you want different results, you got to change something. What got you here won't get you there. And it's helping them understand that you want something different, you got to do something different. It's like the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And if you're going to just keep doing the same thing and expect something different, that's insane.
I agree wholeheartedly. Also, a Far Cry 3 reference. Oh, my favorite. Um, jumping over to Nicole. Nicole, same question to you. How do you get these founders to take that next step to get them off their plateau, even if it makes them drop a little bit before they learn how to fly?
Yeah, it's always a slower process to do things the right way than to try and push forward doing the wrong way. And that is probably the hardest thing for people, who own businesses to kind of swallow, like to just deal with. But I work from a place where we should be continually improving all the time, and especially startups, because startups over the past 25 years have overtaken so many top businesses that were top S&P and Dow, businesses, established enterprises, just by being more nimble and more agile. So startups, once you hit the point where you're no longer a startup, you have to still try and maintain some level of that mindset. You don't want to maintain all the messy stuff and all of the early stage stuff, but you do want to look at how do you keep ideas fresh? How do you run through, if you have an idea, how do you validate it? How do you process it through, your target audiences and determine whether it's a really good path forward for your business to take on? How do you look at your processes, your team, all of that, and figure out what improvements do we need to make over time? How can we automate things that are time consuming or repetitive? Like, what do we need to do so that in 25 years we're not the irrelevant ones being overtaken by a company that's up and coming and more agile than we are? Because that's the threat.
One of my favorite quotes I got from Wes Bergman, one of the people who ran the blocks for us, was put in the work, right? And it was wonderful to see the companies that have been successful in the last couple of years. They're making $1 million now, but they've been working for 12 years to get to that point, right? They're, of the all the companies that we worked with and we're doing stuff with, it is super common for businesses to be running for about a decade plus before they really take off and are making good money. Whereas it is super rare for anything to be like, it's a year and you've made $4 billion. The ones that do that had $1 billion to start, kind of thing. I mean, anyone that bootstrapped or anything like that, you're gonna take a while to get there. And it's always good to remember that things don't happen instantaneously. We go back to another one of my favorite quotes from actually the Stormlight Archives, Cosmere by Brandon Sanderson, uh, said by a character named Delinar Clolin, is the most important step is always the next one. And I find that to be probably one of the most positive ways to think about how you can do life, right? Because it doesn't matter where you're going, or it's about the next step. As long as you're moving forward a little bit at a time, you'll get to where you need to go. Another fun quote is it's not over till it's over. If you're still struggling, it's not over. So just those are some of my last minute thoughts here. I'm gonna jump it over to you guys though and get your guys' last minute thoughts and then wrap up one more time to get where people can find you and what you do one more time, all that fun stuff. So starting with Nicole. Nicole, final thoughts. Wahaha.
Final thoughts. Well, one, I'm definitely going to have to look up your season of The Blocks because I've had clients on that show. So season 4, good to
Yeah.
know. Final thoughts. I mean, great experience. I love talking business and I love relating similar issues and solutions to other industries. That's always something that's really cool to me. So, just a great experience. And you can find me again on any social media platform, the Nerd in a Skirt, except for LinkedIn, of course. You can find me there, Nicole Royer.
Fantastic.
I had to stay professional
Yeah,
at some
yeah, it's
level.
LinkedIn. Yeah, I understand. LinkedIn,
Yeah.
rabble. Gerald?
My final thoughts is it's it's a great experience for people to open themselves up to realize that change is possible, but they're not going to get there being who they were. They're only going to get there being who they are. And we change every day, every year. We're different. And when we embrace that and we embrace the fact that we are who we are and be happy with who we are, even the things we don't like, because until we're accepting of the thoughts that we don't like, we can't change what we don't like. When we pretend it doesn't exist, we can't deal with it. So for me, as I said earlier, you can find me on my website at runrevcoaching.com, and you can find me on Instagram at runrevcoach_Gerald. And just as a side note, do any of you have any idea where I got the tongue-in-cheek reference to Run Rev from?
Is it a tongue twister
There
from
was a
Mad Max?
1980s band.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say
Nope,
Run
it's a
DMC.
throwback. You got it.
Nice.
It was a tongue-in-cheek throwback to Run DMC. So when I first started going online and used my online moniker, I was always Run Rev as a nod to the great Run DMC from the 80s.
Solid. I like that. And last but not least, ending where we started. Carrie, could you please give us your final thoughts?
Yes, changing the world is an inside job. Just remember that. If your world is unhappy, then it all starts from your heart, from your soul, because your soul projects outward. So, and we attract what we are so that we can see ourselves. So, just find ways to love yourself more, open yourself up with gratitude, turn your wounds into wisdom, forgive everyone involved. And I'll be handing out a copy of my 6 Divine Feminine Self-Love strategies. So, there's 6 strategies there for to help you self-reflect and to help you love yourself more and create a more positive experience in life. So, and they're also listed on my website under Second Coming. So you can go to my website, kerryblaser.com, and check it out there. You can check out under Origin Story if you want to read all the signs and synchronicities. My soul is the same soul as Mary Magdalene. I also have another that connection to a Chumash divine feminine story, and then a psychologist who did a review of my book, and he's also a evolutionary astrologer, so he did my whole chart too, which is incredible. So it says divine feminine healer, like screams divine feminine healer. I'm like, okay, so that's all on my website if you want to check me out.
Fantastic. All right. Well, last fun thing before I get you guys out of here, and then we do our little meeting afterwards, is we made 5 songs this week, or I should say, I made 5 songs this week, and I need you guys to all pick a number between 1 and 5, and then I'll do some math, and we'll see which song we get to listen to as we run away. 3, 4, 5. All right. Making me do hard math over here. Ugh. All right, it's goofy, but here we go.
I woke up late again, I swear I tried. Spilled my coffee twice and nearly cried, but I said screw it, I'll face the day. Even if everything goes sideways, I'm stumbling forward through every fall. And hey, at least I gave it my set off alarms, tripped on my shoelace and twisted my arm. Trouble in